remote team is Detective Mark, Special Agent in charge of the Fraud Division. Thanks for agreeing to tackle this threat on such short notice. I'll get right to it. Gizmo Corp, a multinational conglomerate, has contacted us about a highly credible threat. Seems that one of their employees went rogue and is actively working to divert payroll funds. Here's the crazy part. There are dozens of people across the organization that can edit a payroll disbursement at the last moment, and no one actually knows which computer is infected. Now, their payroll is scheduled to go out within the hour, which means you have less than 40 minutes to figure this out and shut down the infected laptop before it's too late. You're going to need to work together as a team, or this whole thing could go really bad. The good news is I have all the information you need in an evidence locker, along with an application that'll help lead you to the insider or target individual, and ultimately the final code to stop the timer. You'll also have an intel agent from my division as your moderator to help you along the way. Okay, before we get going, there's a couple of things to remember. First, when you're assigned a puzzle, make sure a group of people are being tasked to actively work on it while another group pores over the evidence to help solve it. And second, you must use the evidence to solve the puzzles. Time's running out. Remember, police work is a team game, not a solo act. I believe in you. Go get 'em.
Well, first and foremost, welcome everybody. That's the introduction that we have to Living Security Cyber Escape Online, and that's what we're really going to be talking about this morning. For most of you that are on the call right now are going to be people that are either working within the cybersecurity space or going to be working in relation to delivering cybersecurity to your organizations. So we understand that your time is valuable, and we're going to try and make the best use of your time whilst you're with us this morning. I have Drew Rose on this session with me. He is one of the co-founders of Living Security, and we'll go through and we'll be sort of bunny hopping on different parts of the slide deck as we're going through the presentation this morning. But first, good morning or good evening, Drew. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. Excited to be part of this presentation with you.
Great, excellent. Well, listen, I wanted to do a quick introduction in relation to who I am. For those of you that don't know me, that's a very young photo of me. I have less hair now, and it's more grey, and my face is more round. But from a cyber distribution perspective, I wanted to give you a bit of an overview in relation to who we are. So we are a distributor of technology that is focused around the cybersecurity space. Our mission really is to find technologies that is going to actually help to protect organizations in this cyber world. We work exclusively through reseller partners and the reseller channels. So if you're currently an end user who is on this call and you're interested in wanting to know more about Living Security or any of the other technologies that we represent, we're more than happy to work with you and your local partner. When it comes to procurement, that would obviously be going through your local cybersecurity partner as opposed to us directly. One of the biggest differences that we have over and above a lot of other organizations that are in a similar sort of vein to us is that we invest a lot of time in looking at new technologies and vetting new technologies, and we only really bring the number one vendors into this market space. And we feel that that's really important because whether you're a partner or whether you're an end user, it's important that that you're using the best product that you possibly can, and we believe that we can bring that to the market in this across the Asia Pacific region. So Drew, I'll let you do an introduction to yourselves.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I'm one of the founders of Living Security. We started about 2.5 years ago, really with the goal of putting the security awareness training industry on its head. We really focus on immersive security awareness training that comes in lots of different formats, but we deliver training that's effective, that end users want to take instead of the typical computer-based training modules that a trainee or a participant is just trying to get through as fast as possible. We launched with our escape room product, a physical in-person experience. We have a one-to-one solo journey training platform, and then Cyberscape Online is our remote training team training experience. We'll be able to touch on some of those throughout this presentation. But we are all over the world. Mark's doing a great job of getting us into the Australian market. And yeah, no, we're just excited to be having this conversation with all of you.
So Drew, can you give us a little bit of background? Like, where did Living Security come from? I know that I know your story and where the company came from I think is really key, and it would be good for those on the call, because a lot of the people that will be on the call were in a similar situation or a similar position that you were before you started Living Security, and maybe giving them the reasons behind why you decided to start it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent my career as a cybersecurity practitioner, really focused on an inch deep, a mile wide, meaning that I worked on policy, forensics, incident detection and response, new technology deployment, as well as security awareness training. I spent several years in the military, and during my career in the military, building my cybersecurity chops, we took the same security awareness training every single year, and it was the butt of all jokes. Typically, my experience would be to try to get through it as fast as possible, try to remember last year's answers so I didn't have to watch the really crappy video and the crappy content. And it really, from my perspective, it didn't help to drive a good positive security culture within the military. And that held true to some of the larger organizations that were private as well. And so in the years leading up to Living Security, I was able to build cybersecurity awareness programs from the ground up. But instead of just focusing on an easy checkbox solution, just to get the compliance taken care of, I actually invested in my time trying to build relationships with my end users through gamification, game-based learning, incentives, really just trying to motivate the participation through really exciting competitions and games. And that's where I built my first cybersecurity themed escape room, was with my last organization. And to be honest, as a security manager with a lot of responsibility and not a lot of time, I would have bought a solution. If there was something available that I could bring in off the shelf that satisfied my concern of good positive security behavior within my end user population, I would have just paid for it. But there was nothing available. And so, taking some of the work I've done and the things I've built, I brought it to market with my partner, and that was 2.5 years ago, and we still are kind of owning this market of immersive security awareness training, while everyone is still, really just trying to get that checkbox. And so that's a little bit of my background going into why I started Living Security.
Great, excellent. Thanks, Drew. Really appreciate it. So let's move on. As we move through the presentation, there is a question bar there. You'll see it. It says Q&A. If you have any questions during the course of the presentation, please feel free to add them. We'll answer them as we go and/or at the end of the session. But obviously, for everybody who's on the call, we all know the reasons behind why it's important to actually do cybersecurity awareness training. Studies have indicated that 75% of our employees, they really lack the training that they require to be able to help in securing our organisations moving forward. So let's dive into what the cyber escape room is all about. So one of the things that Drew mentioned earlier is that they've developed and launched their in-person cyber escape room. And really, for those of you that have actually experienced a cyber escape room, you'll understand the concept behind it. Really, what Living Security have done is they've basically taken what is a typical escape room type environment and really built a whole cyber security flair around it. And we were launching the cyber escape room in the beginning of the year. Drew first came out to us at the end of January, and we did a whole bunch of meetings around the country, and we had a whole great deal of interest around the physical cyber escape room. Unfortunately for the planet and the environment that we live in, the coronavirus hit. And one of the challenges that we had was obviously a physical escape room was never going to be able to work in a virtual environment, in that most of the organisations we were talking to had sent people home. So everybody's working from home, as most of us on the call would be today. And Living Security, basically what they've done is they've adapted that physical, adapted the physical escape room into the cyber escape online, and that's really what we're here to talk about today. So, although it's a non-physical, you're not in the same room type environment, the experience that you have with using the cyber escape online is very much a similar feeling that you get when you're in person. The difference is that you can't high-five the other people as you answer one of those questions right, and you can't high-five everybody in the room when you actually get to the end of it. So that's one of the main differences that we see. I'm going to pass on to Drew, and he can sort of run through some of the logistics and the breakdown in relation to what the escape room looks like.
Yeah, so Cyberscape Online, we recommend 6 to 8 participants. This is in one session. Obviously, you would run multiple sessions either at a time or throughout a day or week or month. But 8 people per session is my favorite. It lasts about 45 to 60 minutes. Right now there's an internal host or moderator. This could be somebody from one of your security partners teams, or it can be internal to yourself. So for our larger companies where you have a security awareness program owner or somebody that is focused on that role, they will have the time and bandwidth to spend in this type of engagement. And we would do a train the trainer to get them up to speed to be able to host the experience. There's more than 10 security concepts that are covered. Remember, this is general end user training. So the security concepts range from things like phishing, password hygiene, clean desk policy, classification systems, really the basics. We're looking for the entry-level 22-year-old employee just out of university, and Karen in HR that's been there for 40 years. There's 8 puzzles in this escape room, and it is linear, meaning as a group they will go from one puzzle to the next, all as a group together. Each participant will have an opportunity to work on one puzzle, while the rest of the team has to provide them the evidence or the information that is needed to solve that puzzle. Obviously, if you have multiple trainers on your team, you can run simultaneous rooms or simultaneous sessions. There are 8 challenge questions. So those are opportunities to ask a question like, what is phishing? What's a strong password? What would you do in this situation? And we have a leaderboard that you can share out with your team as well. Again, there is a time that is counting down. So during any given campaign, there's going to be a winning team that just kicks butt. And then we can send that and share that leaderboard and try to motivate other teams to come in there and really try to do their best.
That's great. Thanks, Drew. And it's interesting when you start adding things like the leaderboard and you've got teams of people, and it really does put the internal pressure on you as an individual. I know when I've sat through these, and I've felt that exact same way. Obviously because we are all working remotely, one of the things that we're doing, or the way in which this is delivered, is this is basically delivered through any existing video conferencing system that you may have. So, whether you're using Teams or Skype or Google Hangouts, GoToMeeting, it doesn't matter. So we can basically help you in working through your existing platform that you currently use. And we'll show you in a few slides' time, we'll show you that we actually break down. And one of the great things that I really love about what Living Security have done, not just with the Cyber Escape Online, but across their whole organization, is when we go through and we do the train the trainer training, there's a facilitation guide that we'll touch on in a minute, and it goes through in a great deal of granularity in relation to how do I, as an organization, if I want to actually host this myself, how do I do it? Some of the things that we obviously talk about, obviously there's a webcam that is required. You've got access to a microphone because we want to be able to talk to each other. We're sharing screens, and we're also being able to toggle between who's sharing the screens and, their webcam feeds and things like that. I mentioned before the facilitator guide. And I'm going to talk about this because if you're an end customer and you're in a large organization, a classic example, with the in-person escape room, it's ideal, for an organization to be able to bring people into the physical escape room. The challenge that we also have with the physical escape room is that if you're an organization with 20 or 30,000 people, how do you get 20 or 30,000 people into an escape room? You can do that at head office. You can get 10, 1,500, 2,000 at head office because you can run them over the course of the year. But if you have branches all around the country, how do you deliver the same type of content to those people that are remote? And again, this is where Living Security have come in with the Cyber Escape Online scenario. And the Facilitator's Guide, we're going to touch on this twice as we go through this because I want to show you just how detailed and how granular they go when it comes to, being able to train and educate organisations or our partners to deliver on behalf of us, to your organisation. So I mentioned before, we go through and we have a whole bunch of different conferencing systems that we use. I'm not going to touch on all of these. I'm just going to touch through them very quickly. So I mentioned before, and what we do, this is a training guide that we have for each of these platforms, so we can teach you and show you how to actually utilize that particular platform depending upon which platform it is. Because the platforms all do vary and they all do differ from one to the other, Living Security have gone through and put together the most common when we do our train-the-trainer training, depending upon which one you're using, we'll actually train you specifically on that particular application. The other really cool thing that Living Security have done is they've actually built a whole experience manager. And the experience manager is where basically you set up, manage, host the escape rooms from. And Drew, perhaps I'll pass over to you to run through this. Just let me know when you want me to flick through the slides.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the kind of the foundation of our experiences, both Cyberscape Room and Cyberscape Online. This isn't just hosting the game, but we've thought through everything that you may need to make this a successful implementation. So you may have multiple definitions, multiple kits. There's a license count. Next slide. What we really spent a lot of time on was the scheduling system. We have a lot of clients that tried to figure out scheduling on their own. They've used anything from Eventbrite to Google Sheets to their own learning management system, but nothing was able to give them the right features and functionality to make sense. And so we built a calendar and scheduling system from the ground up, where you can schedule bulk sessions in the course of different areas around, online for different organizations, create a campaign, and then send that URL out to your team. And then the different participants will be able to see which session time makes sense for them and their team, and they can automatically sign up for it, get an invite with the Zoom link or the WebEx link, and then show up at the time that has been allotted to them. Next slide.
Yeah, sure. And the other thing that I think is really good about this is that, as we mentioned before, one of the things that I personally like about what Living Security have done is they've developed this for you as clients or for you as partners. So you don't need to go and have to try and think about, well, how do we now deliver this? How do we now get people onto these? How do we invite them? And that's another really good thing that I really like about the platform that Living Security has developed, is that it's a complete package deal. It's all in one, which makes it a lot easier for delivery from an organizational perspective, but also from a management perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we want to make this as turnkey as possible, so you can bring in this type of solution, launch a campaign, get 100 people signed up within the first 24 hours. Awesome. Yeah, so this is just showing some of the more features that we have in terms of setting up the different options for scheduling. Can you head to the next one, Mark? And then the last part, so the scheduling happens before the game, then the game, and then after the game, we have a really comprehensive reporting system, not only showing the engagement, how many people showed up and participated in the game, what their average time was, how many people were in the group, what their team names were. But remember those challenge questions I had brought up earlier? We can actually break down those challenge questions and show you what were some of the challenge questions that your teams were getting wrong the most. And so maybe it's something around your password policy. Now you have some insight into into data that you can use to better mature your program after this type of campaign is completed. Next.
So let me jump in here again. So I mentioned before we're going to talk a little bit about the facilitator's guide and the process that we work with you and take you through when it comes to delivering. In most cases, what we're going to find is you're either going to want to deliver this out to your organisation yourself, or alternatively, for the partners that are on the call, from a partner perspective, a partner will come and obviously deliver this to you on your behalf. So talking about the facilitator's time, they even go in relation to, where Living Security have gone with this. They even go down to looking at, as you're going through the training process, in other words, training you to facilitate these, little things like, this is one of the parts of the training piece. Smile when you're doing it. We're using Google Chrome as the preferred option. So we're going through and we're detailing everything, even in relation to how to meet the visitors when they come on, or the participants when they come on. How to greet them, how to introduce yourself, and how to introduce the online escape room. Webinar help if they've got any assistance, if they need assistance with the webinar or with the system that you're using. They may not have used it before, so we'll go through and we'll actually give you almost a script that you can follow as you're going through this. So for some of you that are on the call, you might be thinking, yes, we have a security awareness. I'm a security awareness person, and I'm not comfortable with going and delivering this. Well, we help in training you on how to actually deliver this yourself, if that's what you want to do, as I mentioned before. Alternatively, we can have our partners come and work with you to deliver it on your behalf. Again, we talk about, this is just more when we talk about what are the instructions. So, we work through with each of the participants, or the participants as a whole, in relation to what's the instruction, how does this work? We check to make sure that the participants are ready. So as an example, as part of this is that we request, or we ask that the participant shares their screen with the rest of the group. So understanding and making sure that the participant is actually able to, or they know where the share screen is. And the other part to that is what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're actually engaging every single person within this concept. So when you're doing a training session, typically, you'll actually have one or two people within a room of 8 or 10 that are going to be the standouts, which is fantastic. And we can pretty much, we can teach you on how to identify who those standouts are. And then you're going to have those people that are going to cower in the back of the corner, who are going to actually, try and hide away from having a question asked to them. So what we do is we approach everybody and ask them to assist us with working through the questions and the puzzles as we're going through the game, which is getting that engagement and getting that teamwork approach working. I've been on sessions where people have been shy and haven't wanted to answer and haven't wanted to be involved. And it's quite interesting when you actually get the rest of the team that are on the session saying, come on, John, you can do it. Hey, we've all done it, and so what it's doing, again, it's really building that teamwork approach, which is exactly what we need to be doing in this time where we're all so dispersed across within our organization. I mean, some people that you typically might have seen on a day-to-day basis, you may not even have spoken to in the last 3 or 4 days or the last 3 or 4 weeks. So again, this is about getting that teamwork approach, and certainly as we start moving back into, or we start thinking about moving back into the organisations, this is a great way to actually, get people to start to converse again where they may be uncomfortable now. Drew, I'll let you talk through the game slides if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we get into the fun part. Thank you for everybody for sticking with us. I know this is not a typical enterprise training experience, but we are excited to continue to show you this, what we built in response to COVID-19. So head to the next slide, Mark. So with the game, so we'll start with webinar help. The first thing we want to do when I get 8 participants on into the platform, logged into Zoom or WebEx, I want to make sure that they know what they're doing, that it's not their first time. They know how to share their screen. They know how to mute themselves. We want to encourage them to start their video. So we have one of these slides for all of the different webinar softwares out there. Head to the next one. All right, so once we make sure everybody's ready to go and participate, we focus on what are the 3 things. Okay, there's 3 different areas that we need to understand. There's the evidence locker, there's the puzzle page, and then there's the experience manager. Head to the next one. So on the puzzle page, there's 8 puzzles. Each puzzle is going to be a different style, a different method. It's going to be covering a different concept. And we'll highlight one person to say, hey, it's your turn, George, to focus on puzzle 1. Pull it up, go to the site, go to the evidence locker, open the puzzle. Everybody else is going to go to the evidence locker. Head to the next slide. So while George is on the first puzzle, everybody else is going to be in the evidence locker. This evidence locker is what holds all of the information, all of the insights, all of the data, the forensics that they need to solve the puzzles. The puzzles cannot be solved without using the right data from the evidence locker. So we have one person in the puzzle, and the other 7 people are starting to scour the evidence locker to find out what information is going to help me solve this puzzle. We have corporate policies in there, blog posts. We have investigation reports from the FBI. We have inside information from the insider threat. If you guys remember the second video that we showed you, I was highlighting that in this organization, there's an insider threat, and you need to figure out who it is and then how to stop their attacks. What we also learned is that the insider left a notepad at the desk that has a lot of really pertinent information on how she was able to go about those attacks. And so we'll use that information to backtrack her steps and figure out, again, who that final target is. Then go to the next page.
I'll just jump in there real quick if you don't mind, Drew. One of the things that's actually, as a participant, as you're going through that and as you're going through the evidence locker, it's actually, if you haven't been through this type of concept before, it's actually quite fun. It's quite fun looking at, what is what's written on the notepad. Who are the suspects, and these are the sort of things that, as a typical individual, we have a bit of an inquisitive mind, and so the way in which this has been set up is very, very engaging. Even if you're not the person who's there, answering the actual physical question, everybody else is actually looking through the evidence locker to find the answer to that question, so you can move on to the next puzzle, and it really gets that adrenaline running as you're going through it. Because the other thing also that you want to do is you want to be the person to find the evidence. So it actually gets, keeps you really motivated as you're going through this process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like inside of a, CIS or crime shows. And then, so this is the last aspect. So as the facilitator, the host, this is what's going to be on my screen. So this is where we're answering the questions like, who is the insider? How did the insider send malicious files? This is where we answer the challenge questions as a group. So in between every puzzle, once they solve that puzzle, we go back to the experience manager to get the data for the next series. Yeah, and so we would make sure that everybody has access to the website. We would double check, and then from there, kind of that 5, 4, 3. We would count down, and the 40-minute timer would start, and then we would go to the first question, and we would just dive into it. And this is the last part, right? So the game's done. They finished with 1 minute to spare. So we're out of the game experience. Right now, we've captured their attention. They have all their eyes on the facilitator. They have excitement, they have energy, maybe a little bit of adrenaline, depending on how fast it took them to get through. Maybe a little bit of frustration there too, depending if their teammates were as useful as they should have been. But at this moment, this is where we're going to go through all the different puzzles and talk about the security concepts. So this is a 5 to 10 minute session that we're really able to drive home the points, the behaviors that we're expecting out of them from all these different concepts that we went over. We can, like I mentioned earlier, we talk about phishing and how to identify flags in a phishing email. We talk about understanding what security policies are and how to find them and what they mean for you. We understand in Hotspot what are some of the new types of risks while working at home. And then we learn about smishing and vishing, SMS phishing and voice phishing as new and opportunist ways of social engineering. And then we also, in the end, we talk a little bit about default credentials and IoT devices. So again, covering the entire spectrum of different cybersecurity concepts for fundamentals.
And one of the things that I had noticed as we went through this is, because this is now an online scenario, we don't have to have a physical puzzle that we do, and we can, obviously push this out to more people within the organization as opposed to the physical escape room. The other thing that's really cool about this is we're also able to actually update and keep this information up to date. So, as an example, if call fire and phishing, they're two relatively new concepts when it comes to cybersecurity. And a lot of our users potentially don't even know what they are. And the really good thing about this is that, and with Living Security, is that as they see these additional vulnerabilities coming out, they'll be able to manipulate the online training and make it relevant to the cybersecurity threats that we see today. So it's really, it's one of the other things I mentioned earlier on about, all the things that I like about what Living Security have done. Now, we've worked in this cybersecurity awareness space for about the last 3 or 4 years, and not dissimilar to what Drew was mentioning earlier, where really he couldn't find anything that actually did what he wanted to do, or alternatively, the content that they were delivering out to the organization was the same stuff that they did last year, which was the same stuff that they did the year before, and the same stuff they did the year before that. And, the idea of doing a cybersecurity awareness training was, how fast can I get through this? Because I want to go to lunch, or I want, what I mean? There's no, and so you're not really learning. You're just trying to get through it as quickly as possible. So, this is one of the, as I mentioned before, this is a very, very engaging way of delivering this content, that you would otherwise, people would be bored sitting through.
Awesome.
So I'll run through now what's included. So what's included when you're looking at purchasing the online, the Cyber Escape Online? So obviously there's training that's required. So we would, as I mentioned previously, we would actually, do some training for you so that we can actually help you in being able to deliver this. Now, for partners that are out there, we would actually do training for you that you can potentially, we would do train the trainer training for partners, so that we would you would then be able to deliver the training to your customer. For those customers that are there, we would do a similar thing. We would do train the trainer training for you so that you can then go and deliver it to your staff. We'll also host one of our team will do a live session for you. We'll obviously work through the facilitation PowerPoint, the gameplay, and the reference guide. The other part to this is, the internal marketing. So how do you actually get people engaged in wanting to do this type of session? Now, if you've got mandatory cybersecurity awareness training, mandatory is, yes, this needs to be done, but when does it need to be done? So we can actually set within the marketing piece, we can actually set within the portal that Living Security have got, timelines and so forth of when people need to do that. And the other part to it is that we've also got internal marketing that you can actually use to help in gaining interest in relation to someone wanting to do the Cyber Escape Online scenario. The debriefing, as we mentioned before, the debriefing is one of the key areas where a lot of the learning is done. When you're sitting in the escape room or when you're doing the escape room, as Drew mentioned and I've mentioned, the adrenaline is going, and sometimes you might, although you're trying to find evidence, you're not too sure what the evidence is relevant to. So the debriefing is really good because it allows you to go through those security concepts, as Drew just mentioned. We also have training nudges. So in other words, if you can see that people are getting caught in a certain area, or they're not able to actually answer, or you can see that they're not getting closer to the answer, we've got nudges that we can help them with. And again, in relation to the technology piece, the scheduling, the calendar invites, the reporting is really important. I actually have a question that's offline at the moment where someone's asking, well, what happens, what's the value in relation to us as an organization? How do we actually see it? Does this comply with, with our, can this tie into our cybersecurity awareness training across the board? Absolutely. So you're going to get those reportings. The other thing that's quite good is it can be personalized. So if there's specific security concepts that you want to cover, then we can actually address that, and we can customize some of the content that can potentially be more relevant to what you're trying to deliver out to your organization or your users. The other thing also we provide is virtual backgrounds, so that you as the host, instead of actually having a lounge room or whatever it may be behind you, we actually have the virtual backgrounds. We have video of the virtual background that actually counts down the timer, so that when you're ready to start, it counts that down. And during gameplay, you may see in one of the previous slides, during gameplay you'll see that there's a counter up here that is on the screen the whole time. So it's actually keeping that pressure on the team, so that they can make sure that they're getting through the escape room. So let's look at what people are saying. So Drew and the team have been working on this for a little while now. They've obviously hosted quite a few of them. I'm not going to read these out. There has been some questions around, will we provide the slides? We certainly will. We'll also provide, we won't provide the slides. We will provide a recording of this session. So if you've got other people within the organization that you'd like to share this with, or you just like the sound of mine or Drew's voice, please feel free to play it back at a later stage. But yeah, I'm not going to go through that, but certainly you'll see that the engagement that we're getting from the Cyber Escape Online is certainly a lot greater than what you're getting from the standard, typical old school version or old school style of cybersecurity awareness training. Lots of questions around this next slide, so thank you to all those, and I knew I was going to get to it, so I haven't answered you all, and I do apologize. But so let's look at the pricing. So one of the things that Living Security have done, again, kudos to them. Obviously, this is a new launch of a new product, is number one. Importantly, I think one of the things that Living Security have done is they've looked at the situation we're in at the moment with the coronavirus. This is affecting not just us, it's affecting everybody globally. And I think what Living Security have done is they've really put the price point at a very, very reasonable level, to help us all out, as we're moving through this coronavirus situation or coronavirus scenario. So we do have, the pricing model is basically $10,000 per 1,000 users. Once you've used that 1,000 users, then you would obviously just then purchase additional. For partners that are on the call, very similar type of structure. We can talk to you offline about that. But again, once if you're hosting on behalf of clients, you would then the license count as you register and as you're using the Escape Online, the platform, it would actually just remove those. It would take off the amount of users that you've done, and at the end of it, you would then purchase additional. The 2021, there is going to be a price increase, obviously, as the platform is developed further. And hopefully at that point we'll be also able to offer you all the the on-premise Cyber Escape Room, which for those of you that have actually seen it, I know there's a few on the call that we've actually done some demo escape rooms to you. Yes, we will be bringing it back. Yes, we're very excited to do that. Unfortunately, as you can appreciate right now, we can't get out to your site. So when we can, we certainly will be back out and delivering that, and our partners will be back out and delivering that, and also offering the Cyber Escape Room in-person version, for you to actually purchase and utilize internally. So keeping on the Cyber Escape Online scenario, there is an optional, if you wanted us to host a session for you, we can run through 64 participants in a day. Again, this rate is reduced rate, but yeah, if you're wanting us to do that, then we can do that as well. And really, the only other next step, we've got a number of questions that are sort of, how do we get onboarded? Well, I'm glad you asked, because here's the next slide. Really, the onboarding process is relatively straightforward. We mentioned before, we do train the trainer training. We will review the experience manager with you. We'll work with you in setting up the communications plan and the registration plan. We'll work through all the logistics to make sure that the first experience for you is successful. The suggestion is, for most, in the first instance, as you are launching, we would work with you in relation to potentially we might suggest that we do a room of 6 to 8 people that are close to you, so that you can get comfortable in actually hosting it, and then we'd basically look at, okay, let's just move this forward now and start really moving this out. There are additional materials that we have. We have a survey poll. We have survey polls, and we also have a retention quiz. Again, it's important for us to understand what this looks like, and the retention of the cyber escape room online. We mentioned before that the traditional training that you would all have done, and potentially some of you may be delivering, really isn't getting the traction that we need to within our user group. So the retention quiz is really important. As far as the marketing, again, we've got banners and flyers and emails and all that sort of thing that you can spread to your organization and to your users. What's interesting, and we see this very similar to the in-person cyber escape room, but what I can tell you is that when I told my team that I'd done an online cyber escape room, they were like, "Holy, can I do it?" And so it became really interesting to us that we are using this internally for our own internal training. When people start talking about it, all of a sudden you start getting a herd mentality of people who wanting to do it. And this sort of thing, within an organization, not dissimilar to the physical cyber escape room, but it really starts to go viral, because if you're hosting one person within the a group of 6 or 8, they then go and talk to their colleague who wasn't on it, and they'll be like, "Oh, I want to do that as well." So it really helps to enjoy the experience and share that experience throughout the organization. What else have we got? And look, that was really it. That was all we really covered. Look, I know there are a bunch of questions, and we'll go through those, and we'll open that up now. So there was a question that we have: what's the ideal number of participants? So Drew, maybe I might ask you the questions, Drew, and then you can answer them for me. How's that?
Yes.
So ideal number of participants.
Yeah, I mean, 8 is my favorite. 8 is the best amount of people where everybody gets one opportunity to solve a puzzle. You can do it with less, you can do it with more, but 8 is the best. I wouldn't go over 10 per session.
Great. And I'm going to just repeat one of the questions that was asked online. It's a great question, Roy. Thank you so much. If a player gets disconnected, can they reconnect without having to restart the game?
Yeah, because we're using, whatever webinar software is your client or your organization uses. That Zoom meeting or WebEx meeting should already be running. If for some reason the host or moderator gets kicked off, then they will be able to pause the game, wait till everybody gets back on, and then start it up again without kind of losing time in the experience. Great.
Can you change the difficulty level?
We will. So in our escape rooms, which are we've been maturing over the last 2.5 years, we actually have nine different versions of our escape rooms. Some are based on difficulty, some are based on concept, some are based on role. So we launched this 2 weeks ago after building it for 2 weeks. If this goes as successful as we're planning, we will absolutely be adding on additional Cyberscape Online experiences that may be that may have increased difficulty levels for IT or technologists, or again, it could be different concepts or different roles, just like we do with our physical escape rooms.
Great, thank you. Great question. Do you have to turn on your webcam?
No, you do not have to turn on your webcam. We think it helps to kind of build that camaraderie within your team, to be able to kind of build a relationship during the experience. But if you're haven't gotten your hair done in a while, or you get your makeup all made up, you don't have to turn on your webcam.
Great. Are there scenario sessions facilitated by Living Security or as a service provider?
Yes, so it can be both, right? So our typical scenario is that we will train the service provider to be a certified trainer, and they would be the ones hosting either the day of experiences for their client, or they in turn would be doing a train the trainer for their client, which would host it internally.
Yep, great. Thank you, Drew. Can we track to see which team finishes fastest and how many questions and how many questions they got right?
Yes, absolutely. That's all in that's all in the reporting system. We actually have a public leaderboard that you can send out for that campaign. So even the teams can actually track how they're doing amongst all the other teams that are participating. And then at the end of the campaign, you can pull a report that shows who the leaders were, how many people on the team, how long it took them, which questions they got right or wrong. And yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Do we need anything, do we need to send anything out to participants beforehand to prepare?
No, you don't. Everything so far, you could give them a little taste of what they're about to experience, like one of the participant videos, to be like, let's get them pumped up. But there's no like learning prerequisites that they have to go through in order to go through the experience.
Great. Can the participants sign up on their own if we schedule multiple sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can schedule individually, or they can actually schedule their entire team. So if there's a manager and the manager wants to take their entire team through as a team building exercise, they can sign up for all 8 slots for a session.
Excellent. Is the interaction with the team members via audio or text chat?
Yeah, it's audio. We like audio. Only been text chat, but that does sound very interesting. I can imagine it would be a bit slower, which is not what we would want from already being an hour experience. But if somebody does have a hearing impairment and they can only talk via a text or chat window, then it's absolutely can work through the native features of Zoom or WebEx or Skype.
That was a very good question, and one that I actually hadn't heard before. So thank you, Kirk, for asking that.
Yeah.
That's in actual fact, it would be something that we will possibly take offline again and have another think about as well. Or I would like to have a further discussion with Drew about that. We've been asked to get a demo environment to test it before extending it to customers. Look, we certainly can. We can talk to you if anybody would like to do a demo of the Escape Online. We'll certainly be reaching out to you post this webinar or post this introduction webinar, and we will be hosting a limited amount of these demo webinars. Demo sessions, so you can have a look at. Do you have an average expected time for the escape room to be completed? Great question.
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good question. So the escape room has a 40-minute time limit. That gives us about 10 minutes to do the briefing, 10 minutes to do the debriefing, and then we're done in an hour. We are on average seeing teams finish in 35 minutes, so that gives us about 5 more minutes if there's any problems on the front side or if they want to extend on the back side. But typically it's not going over an hour.
Yeah. And one of the important things you just made a really good point that I'll just elaborate on as well. Our goal is to be able to skill the trainer up, the person who's going to be hosting this on behalf of your organization, whether it be one of our partners or yourselves. Our goal before we kick off with you and we start you start delivering that out to your organization is to ensure that you're completely comfortable with it. Now, I'm not as you can probably see, I can click back and forth in relation to going through a slide presentation, but what I can tell you is that when I have been through this myself, with the training that I've had, it's very, very easy. It's not rocket science. The technology that runs the whole platform and what Drew and the team have put together but the ability for me to actually deliver it has been made very simple by the content and by the training that has been put together. And I've been through it a couple of times. I've been through the trainer training, and I can tell you that I feel confident enough now to be able to go and deliver the trainer training. Number of different reasons. One, obviously, because I have seen it and I've done it. But the second is that I've got the materials there that are there to support me. So if I'm not too sure, then I can reference the materials back. And the other part is that if I'm not too sure, I always have, and you will have either your partner or us to assist you with that. If you need to run through it again, we're happy to even sit on an escape room that you host and then give you some constructive feedback in relation to what we thought and how you delivered it. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that you are delivering this content and you are delivering this training, this cybersecurity awareness training, as well as we would do it if we were doing it ourselves. Now, you don't need to be a cybersecurity expert, and I want to, reiterate that. That's, we have actually developed this, or Living Security has developed this, that, we're a facilitator in being able to facilitate the delivery of this, of the escape room online. Any other questions? I think that's all for the questions, which has been brilliant because we are about 5 minutes before the top of the hour, so we may finish a little bit early. If there are any other questions, I would encourage you to either reach out to us or alternatively reach out to your cybersecurity specialist, your cybersecurity partner that you deal with. As mentioned before, as you would have seen in the original video, Living Security and the Cyber Escape Online, we're open for business. You can start delivering this to your organisation, or have your preferred partner delivering this to you and your organisation, as of next week. You could do it tomorrow, but asking for a purchase order in 24 hours is usually a bit quick. But, certainly it is ready to go. We do very much appreciate your time. I know that it's valuable. And Drew, again, thank you very much for your time, mate. Much appreciated. I know it's late over there in Texas. But I guess, like the rest of us, you've got nothing else to do at night, so you might as well be jumping on calls with Australia at this time of the day, right?
It's night. It's night over here. It's that late. Yeah, I don't even know anymore.
Well, listen, thank you all very much. As I said, any additional questions, feel free to shoot them through to us. Get in contact with your local security partner, and we'll liaise with them in being able to, to come back to you with answers to your questions. And for those, there's about 3 or 4 people who have actually asked for us to, for us to get in contact with them straight away. We will certainly do that, and then we'll obviously, push you through to one of our preferred partners that are certified in relation to the delivering this for you as well. So thanks again, everybody. Have a very nice afternoon, and thank you, Drew. And please, everybody, stay safe. Last but not least, I did want to actually put a shout out to all those people who are working, in and around people with the coronavirus. For all those, all those nurses and doctors. I know this is untraditional for this type of environment to be thanking them for that, but I would just like to acknowledge, the efforts that they're putting in, and for us all to acknowledge that, because, without them, we certainly wouldn't be in the position that we are now. So, again, thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.